That's him. That's the OG.
Fantasy Football Daily live free agency special. Theo Greminger on the Fantasy Points Podcast Network and Fantasy Points YouTube. Very, very special day. I'm joined today by Scott Barrett and Brett Whitefield. Guys, this has been a day that we've had circled for a long time. It was important for us to go live because we're getting so much live breaking news. The legal tampering period more and more often has been just unbelievable for the amount of fantasy football fallout we're getting from it. Today is no different. If you're watching the show live, a big thank you to our Fantasy Points audience. If you have any questions for us on the fantasy implications, any rumors you're hearing, make sure you drop those in the chat. We're going to try to get to those. The biggest news of today, though, and Scott, we've talked about this before. Kenneth Walker, who's been a player that I know you've been extremely high on in multiple seasons, ends up with the nuts landing spot for many. Kansas City running back was one of the biggest dominoes to fall for many fantasy managers out there, and an ADP driver that it was going to take whoever landed there up to another level. With Kenneth Walker, you add in the recency bias of the Super Bowl MVP performance, coupled with the unbelievable run he had throughout the NFL playoffs for the Super Bowl champions. Kenneth Walker's headed to the second round of 2026 drafts. Is he a player that Scott Barrett is interested in at those prices? And what do you think about Kansas City investing so heavily in the running back position?
Yeah, so I'm excited about this. I think this is going to spur a debate between Brett and I, but I'm excited about this. You know, I love Kenneth Walker. You know, I'm a firm believer in his talent. He's ranked top 3 in missed tackles forced per carry in each of the last 3 seasons. Missed tackle force machine. Whenever he's healthy on the field, he's incredible. I think he looks great on tape. I think, you know, the numbers are there. He's productive. And I like this landing spot. There are so many touchdowns up for grabs in this offense. Kareem Hunt, the last 2 years in a heavy committee while averaging 2.2 yards per carry, was averaging double-digit fantasy points per game. And now you have Patrick Mahomes coming off of a devastating injury. Dr. Chow, football injury expert, is saying he's not going to be anywhere near close to as mobile as he's been in years past. What does that mean? It means an offense that's probably going to be top 5, top 3 in points per game, red zone drives per game. It means less vulturing from Patrick Mahomes, which, you know, the greediest quarterback in the NFL, especially inside the red zone and from a touchdown perspective. A lot of that going to Kenneth Walker. I saw a really, really dank stat from Jared Smalla, good friend over at Draft Sharks. I want to pull it up here in a second, and I don't want to get it wrong, but it's just basically saying, yeah, so the Chiefs led the league last year with 135 carries against defenses with 6 or fewer men in the box. They ranked 7th in 2024, 2nd in 2023. So last year, Kenneth Walker saw a lot of stacked fronts. He kind of saw that all throughout his tenure in Seattle, which always had a bottom 3 offensive line. Maybe not last year, but pretty bad on paper. And now he should be getting a lot of light fronts. And for a player as talented with him, with game-breaking speed, I'm really bullish. I think the big issue here is that obviously Kenneth Walker has serious injury concerns, really serious. And he was not a bell cow last year up until the playoffs when Zach Charbonnet went down. And so a team, maybe not the team in the Chiefs, who have no depth behind him and just sign him to a big deal. But on paper, you have to worry about that durability, a historical reluctance to give him that, 20 plus touches per game, all of the soft tissue injuries, the sports hernia injury that reoccurs. But I'm bullish. We'll see where ADP ends up. But I think on paper, you have to be a fool to say this isn't a great landing spot. But I know that's exactly what Brett's about to say.
Well, Brett Whitefield is clearly not a fool. And Brett Whitefield is not excited about this landing spot. We talked on the phone earlier, Brett. This has to do, correct me if I'm wrong, you have a little bit concerns about how Andy Reid and the Chiefs have used running backs. I mean, do we not remember LaShawn McCoy? Are we not allowed to use historical Andy Reid running backs anymore, Brett?
Cool. Tell me what the overlap between Kenneth Walker III and LaShawn McCoy is. Go ahead.
Not a whole lot, but
not a whole lot, right?
Yeah.
Andy Reid traditionally he's never had success with a running back like Kenneth Walker. It's not even happened one time.
I mean, pre-washed Kareem Hunt.
Kareem Hunt was a dynamic player in the pass game. Uber dynamic. He was dominant as a pass protector and a route runner and a receiver. He was awesome after the catch. Like, these are things Kenneth Walker hasn't really shown us.
I will not to interrupt, but I will add the 46 receptions for Walker in 2024. Don't you feel like that there's a little bit of room to run upwards from that number and get him into maybe the 55 to 60 range, Brett? Very, very small little bump, and then you're talking about an easy RB1.
Yeah, he can catch dump offs and checkdowns and screens. Sure, that's not what I'm talking about. There's a difference between being able to function in a passing offense and being a pass game weapon. Andy Reid has had success with Brian Westbrook, LaShawn McCoy, Kareem Hunt. These were pass game weapons, not the same thing.
Don't forget the first round pick spent on like the ideal, the dream of CEH. Obviously, he was awful, as you predicted, Brett, but like they put that draft capital on a guy who's supposed to be a really good pass catcher, mediocre runner.
Right. And like it's probably fine. I don't think it's the optimal place he could have landed is all. So I'm not super excited. I would have much rather have seen him in New York or in Washington with Jaden Daniels. Also, Scott, you mentioned the light box thing. That's like, it's true and kind of true. Like Seattle, they did face heavier boxes, but they also had 2 tight ends on the field all the time. 2 tight ends that are fantastic run blockers, by the way, that create alleys for guys like Kenneth Walker. The Chiefs, they'll get lighter boxes, but their offensive line sucks, and they don't have a legit blocking tight end on the field. So, yeah, maybe slightly lighter boxes with light or lesser efficacy from the front. I think that's probably a wash, to be quite honest with you. So, yeah, I'm just, I'm not bullish on the landing spot at all. I think he could have been optimized. It's fun. It's a fun talking point because every year we get to say, oh, the Chiefs offense will look different next year. And then it doesn't. It's a third or fourth year in a row. Pass rate over expectation. The Chiefs are the number 1 in pass rate over expectation in the last 2 years. Andy Reid traditionally is not a guy who comes off of his priors. That's why he got fired in Philly. He's a fantastic head coach, but this is not a guy who's very flexible in what he does. So, I'm just not bullish.
Yeah. So I think you just look at this offense, its potential to potentially lead the league in touchdowns and red zone drives and points per game, or at least top 3, top 5, where it's been historically prior to last year. The offensive line, the lighter fronts. I like this landing spot, but when you factor in the inevitable price climb and the buzz you're seeing in Twitter where you're not hearing Brett's contrarian argument against it, I think once you factor in the price, I lean more towards Brett. You guys know I'm a Kenneth Walker fan, but last year we were getting a discount. Now you're getting a negative injury discount. And so, yeah, I think he's going to be too expensive. I think there's a little too much risk there. And, Brett's opinion does matter to me. So I think the consensus, the streets are going to be a little overly optimistic and he's going to be a little expensive for my liking.
I will say that the ADP streets have been longing for a big name to end up in Kansas City with the Breece Hall. The last time we were live, guys, we were talking about how Kansas City didn't pull the trigger on a 3rd round pick for Breece Hall. Sort of just the way that it kind of works out. They end up with this Kenneth Walker signing. But I think that the ADP market, like you said, Scott, it might push Kenneth Walker to a position where it's really hard to click that button. Last year, we were getting him at the 3-4 turn in main FFPC main events, underdog. I think we're heading towards Kenneth Walker being a late 2nd round pick. Looking at the current ADP market. Go ahead, Brett.
Breaking news. The New Orleans Saints are signing running back Travis Etienne.
That's one we talked about, Brett, and we're going to get to that in about 1 minute here. Just to finalize our Kenneth Walker discussion, Kenneth Walker, I think I will lean to Scott. This is absolutely a win for Walker to get away from Zach Charbonnet, but the ADP marketplace might push Kenneth Walker up next to a Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry. I think he's going to pass Chase Brown. Let's react on the fly here. Travis Etienne, Brett, we talked about this, and the 3 of us have been basically talking for about a day and a half now on potential landing spots to try to prepare for this one. And we thought that there would be a fallout once Kansas City made their signing at the running back position, whether it was Etienne, whether it was Walker. We fully expected another running back to land, potentially on a New Orleans, potentially on a Washington. We get it here with Etienne. There's been speculation for a few days on this one with the Saints beat reporters. I like this one, Brett. We're bullish on Kellen Moore, a coach that, from fantasy perspective, always runs an offense that runs a lot of plays. Usually the pace is pretty good. We've got a mobile year 2 quarterback who had some really fine moments down the stretch in Tyler Shuck. You've got a big-time wide receiver in Chris Olave, an offensive line that we think could be a lot better this year. It continues to get older and more experienced. And now Travis Etienne ends up going back to his home state. I like this one. I mean, I think that the touchdown equity for Etienne is going to go down, but it sort of keeps him in the mix for that top 15 running back production this year. Kamara, I'm not sure what they do with him. I don't think it's kind of irrelevant at this point, but I think Etienne can catch passes in this backfield and will have the goal line work all to himself. Another 1,000-yard season for Travis Etienne, for me, feels likely. Brett, where are you at on this one?
Yeah, I would like this landing spot a lot. I'm a much bigger Kenneth Walker fan as a player, but this landing spot to me is a little bit better. I'm curious to see what kind of money he gets too, but there's not another running back on the roster that really scares me away from Etienne. I think Kamara is thoroughly washed, and then go down the rest of the depth chart there. There's really nothing scary. You mentioned that offensive line. That offensive line is really good, and it's an ascending offensive line. A lot of young players playing their best football ahead of them. So I do think this is a really good spot. We are Kellen Moore fans. Tyler Shuck, exceeded expectations by 1,000,000 miles last season as a rookie. So I can get on board with this for sure.
Scott, your thoughts on Travis Etienne, off the cuff reaction to him becoming a New Orleans Saint? Not on the Liam Cohen offense, of course. But we end up with another offensive play caller that we like in Kellen Moore. A win for Etienne? So
I love the play caller. I love the offense. Kellen Moore, a pace god, really good track record with running backs. I don't know what to make of Travis Etienne. I don't know that I'm kind of a hater, let's say. So 2023, 3.8 yards per carry, 2024, 3.7 yards per carry. I'm like, this guy's dead. And then rips out of the gates in 2025 with another great play caller. Lights the world on fire the first month, and then week 5 on, he's back to like 3.3 yards per carry. And I don't know that he's super talented. And I think a lot of this landing spot hinges upon what happens with Alvin Kamara. What does that contract look like? Can they get out of a lot of money on the books by cutting him? Could he potentially retire? No Alvin Kamara. I love this, and I'm excited despite my potential bias against Travis Etienne. But
Scott,
with an Alvin
news again.
Oh,
okay. So this one has been widely speculated. We're going to get to, if anybody's listening to this on the podcast, we were going to talk about Wan'Dale Robinson next, a widely speculated landing spot reuniting with Brian Dable in Tennessee. But Scott, finish your thoughts on Travis Etienne.
Yeah, again, I think it comes down to if Alvin Kamara is there or not. If Alvin Kamara is there, it's a committee backfield. And what's the value of a low-end RB2 in fantasy? Not a lot. You really want those highest-end producers. But if we see an Alvin Kamara release, an Alvin Kamara retirement, just as a bet on volume, even for a player I don't really like, I'd be very excited about that.
Now, I think it's going to be Alvin Kamara back on the Saints, but very much fading into the sunset. There's a restructured contract for Alvin Kamara. He's 31 years old, coming off of an MCL injury. I think Kamara is way less of a threat than Bashal Tutin would have been to Travis Etienne in Jacksonville, and Tutin on the flip side. So I wonder if we're going to see a convergence of ADPs here, Scott. Right now, Travis Etienne was the running back 18. I think the market will have a lukewarm approach to this. He'll stay in that running back 18 through 21 range, and he will be joined easily with a chance to be flipped, depending on how Jacksonville approaches free agency, with Bashal Tutin, who's the running back 27. Bashal Tutin, dynasty managers, you are very excited about this one. Bashal Tutin at RB27, this is just screams year 2 breakout. I would love to tell you guys about some of my Bashal Tutin dynasty trades I pulled off the last couple months in anticipation for this one. But let's concentrate on just Bashal Tutin potentially in a Liam Cohen offense. Brett, your thoughts on Tutin, a guy that we both liked last year as a prospect. and one that we know the Jacksonville organization has some confidence in. If he survives the wreckage of free agency here, could Tootin be a potential liftoff 1,100 plus yard type guy and have maybe push for double-digit touchdowns this season?
Yeah, I like Tootin a lot. I really liked him as a prospect. Obviously, I think he is the modern running back where he's a big play guy, and teams are hunting big plays, big explosives in the run game. My only concern, I want to see him get out of the woods. You know, I could see a Rashad White type guy landing there, and I think that would be damaging, to his profile for next year. But if he gets out of the woods and it's just a Bashal Tootin, LaQuint Allen backfield, I'm real bullish on him.
Yeah, very, very exciting stuff. Scott, your thoughts on Bashal Tootin and your expectations for him in a Liam Cohen offense, again, unless we have some big movement with another running back that we like headed there.
Yeah, that was a player. Brett and I were both very high on, me for the analytics, Brett for the film. And both of us kind of said, he might be a slow starter in the NFL, but we know the GM head coach very bullish on him. James Gladstone, the GM, said he wanted to draft him before Gladstone was even a member of the Jaguars. He said that in his interview process. We'll have to see what kind of competition's brought in, but just on paper right now, that's extremely exciting.
Another one I'm very excited about, the Tennessee Titans. Brett, you were talking about Daniel Bellinger earlier today, and sort of now it's starting to make sense
folks
here.
Who don't know, Brett was obsessed with this Daniel Bellinger signing.
We didn't want to lose the YouTube audience, so we avoided saying the word Daniel Bellinger until minute 16 of the stream. But Brett, we see two New York Giants reuniting with Brian Daboll in Tennessee. Wan'Dale Robinson, guys, over the last 2 years, has had 185 receptions. He's had 280 targets. Wan'Dale Robinson even had Scott Barrett capitulating to him this season on School of Scott after being furious at the 2024 season of Wan'Dale Robinson. Scott, you came around and you sort of started to appreciate Wan'Dale Robinson, the shortest player in NFL history to ever have a 1,000-yard receiving season. Now he reunites with Brian Daboll on a wide receiver room that needed a big-time target earner. I mean, I think that the floor for Wan'Dale Robinson, based on the money they just paid him in his last 2 seasons, and the fact that it's Daboll again, you're looking at a 125 target floor for Wan'Dale Robinson. He landed very well here. Also, no Malik Neighbors on this roster. Start with you, Scott. Your favorite player. Talk about Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah, so let me just say, coming out of college, I was a major Wan'Dale Robinson truther. He played with Will Levis at Kentucky, but he converted to running back from running back to wide receiver just 5 years ago. And so I saw a lot of potential. And then 2024 was awful. It was literally one of the worst seasons in NFL history on an EPA per target basis. 2025, I was really impressed. He kind of elevated his game. He took another leap forward, which maybe makes sense given his lack of experience at the position. And so this is a good landing spot, $17.5 million per year. That's like Jerry Jeudy, Cooper Kupp money. That's not egregious on Tennessee's part. And, the big issue with a player like Wan'Dale is he slot only? Is he only going to be a 60% route share guy? But we know what his role looks like in this Brian Daboll offense. It's one of the few spots I think he can be a 95% route share guy. The only problem is I don't think this offense is any good. I mean, last year it was one of the deadest environments from a fantasy perspective I can remember. The highest scoring player by fantasy points per game, it was just barely Tony Pollard, but then number 2 was the kicker ahead of Cam Ward, which is so bad. So not a player I'm drafting, not a player I'm particularly excited about, but if you're in best ball, this is one of the few landing spots where at least he's going to be a full-time player. What are your thoughts, Brett?
I really like Wan'Dale. You talked about that ascension last year, the step he took forward. Guys, his ADOT went up by 4 yards from 2024 to 2025. So he proved he can do some of the 3-level route running, the intermediate stuff, some of the deep stuff. I mean, he was truly a 3-level player for them, which had not been the case prior to last season. So he definitely earned his money. Also, I got to toot my own horn. I projected his contract exactly what it came in at, 4 years, $78 million. So that's fun. But I really like this, and I like getting a guy who's so good in the short part of the field for a quarterback in Cam Ward who struggles to play on schedule a little bit. Wan'Dale Robinson should very much help with that. And now that we know that the Titans have signaled to us that they're not going to roster a pass catching tight end with the Hammers, Daniel Bellinger, and Gunnar Helm, I mean, Wan'Dale could get another 96 catch season pretty easily here.
I dropped my my bold predictions on January 1, and I said Wan'Dale Robinson to the Tennessee Titans. Actually, no, I think I said that one. But Wan'Dale Robinson to Tennessee has been one we've been speculating for weeks, Brett. It makes so much sense, and I think, Scott, wide receiver 46 on Underdog has been way, way, way too low for Wan'Dale. I expect him to rise up and probably touch wide receiver 3 land relatively soon. I will add that there's a chance that, Scott, you said this offense is really, really gross. There's I think a high probability that Tennessee takes either Carnell Tate or Jeremiah Love with the 5th overall pick. So I think another opportunity for a young, exciting player to be an offensive focal point. But Wan'Dale Robinson in somewhat similar role as last season. Definitely an exciting one if you're holding him in Dynasty. He survives this free agency marketplace and lands pretty well. Let's talk about Tyler Algier. This has been one where, Brett, the two of us and Scott a little bit, we've talked about Tyler Algier as a backup running back who the market might treat as a starter. Gets a 2-year deal for $12 million here. And this is a fun landing spot where James Conner restructures his contract. Trey Benson cannot stay on a football field. Like, Trey Benson last year we got a little bit excited for and then just couldn't get back. For me, Tyler Algier has a chance to run away with this backfield. You've got LaFleur as the new head coach there, offensive-minded head coach. I'm sort of into this one. Algier's had an elevated ADP, an Underdog, and FFPC, maybe a little bit higher than some people were comfortable clicking. But I think that his ADP is probably going to at least solidify here, right in this RB30 range. He's RB31 right now. Your thoughts here, let's start with you, Scott, on Algier signing with the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, this is not a fun landing spot. This is an awful landing spot. You know what you're doing, Theo? You're writing off James Conner.
Yes, I am.
How has that worked out for anyone in any year of James Conner's career? It hasn't. The dude he's a swan song of his career, but he's only 30. And dude is really good, really underrated. He's been written off many times, and he's the Grim Reaper. You know, he's claimed a lot of souls, and you know, when healthy, has been the workhorse. But yeah, what do you have here? You have James Conner, you have Tyler Algier, Trey Benson, all like really good running backs, all similar running backs, as you know, early down workhorses. Conner has a little bit more juice in the pass game. What does this look like to me? This looks like a running back by committee situation, and not a lot of fantasy excitement here for a head coach I have no faith in, and a team without a quarterback right now. And so this does not get me excited in the slightest.
Brett, your thoughts on Tyler Algier? Scott Barrett and I butting heads a little bit on this one.
Yeah. Before I get to that, real quick, the Saints just made another splash. They signed guard David Edwards from the Bills, who was one of the best free agent guards available. So just tying this back to the ETN conversation, the 1 weak link on that Saints offensive line was the left guard spot where Dylan Radunes is taken off in free agency. They actually upgrade the spot with David Edwards. So this offensive line is like to the moon. I might put some Saints to win that division bets on the table.
Yeah, and multiple offensive tackle first rounders like anchoring that offensive line there. This is going to be a very, very good offensive line.
Agreed. Back to Algier though. So the thing with Conner, and I agree, if Conner's on the roster, that is definitely not a nothing. I do think the restructure or the renegotiation, it wasn't a restructure, the renegotiation, he took a slight pay cut to stay. I actually think the strategic element of that is it positions them better to trade him. They'll suffer less of a dead cap hit. And so I would actually be on the lookout for a James Conner trade at this point, especially with Tyler Algier signing here. So again, with Scott, though, if he's on the roster come week 1, that is really not good for Algier because Connor's a baller.
Okay, guys. Well, Tyler Algier escapes Bijan Robinson, and Scott Barrett and Brett Whitefield are down on it because of the landing spot. Let us know in the comments. Let us know in the comments here.
That's good. Kudos to you.
Let us know in the comments. And Tyler Algier had 8 touchdowns last year. He has a 1,000-yard rushing season. He's not a complete nothing. I'll say everybody loves when we do this year's version of. Tyler Algier could be this year's version of Rico Dowdle if people are going to fully embrace this is a running back by committee. I'll tell you what.
Rico Dowdle had around 18 ADP, and you wouldn't let me draft him in any of our teams.
That is a whole nother. We did have some Rico Dowdle. Shout out to Abib Agbatoba, or Abib Agbatoga, FFPC main event championship team there. Not overall, but our league, Scott. We had a Rico Dowdle share. So we'll continue this conversation. We talked about Wan'Dale Robinson signing with Tennessee, but the big news of the day, and the biggest sort of domino to fall at the receiver position, was Alec Pierce re-signing with the Indianapolis Colts with a mammoth $117 million 4-year deal that puts him as one of the higher paid wide receivers in all of football. This one, when this first happened, I put a post out on X saying, look for Michael Pittman Jr. as a potential cut candidate. In fact, they traded Michael Pittman Jr. to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they now you have Alec Pierce, basically the de facto wide receiver one. Scott, you had sort of a little funny tweet out there earlier where you said you thought he would be a New England Patriot, but realistically, Alec Pierce has been a guy that us at Fantasy Points we've been very high on for a while. He's been an ascending player. It's sort of a slow drip where his production goes up each and every season. The Colts talked him up a lot, and we started to see it last year. With the amount of money that they paid him and the fact that they're moving off of Michael Pittman Jr., it feels like to me that we're going to see Alec Pierce taking a whole nother level, maybe get into the 110 target range. Your thoughts on Alec Pierce and this new potential role as the wide receiver one in the offense? Yeah.
Trust Brett with whatever he says after this, but let me frame this. And I'm very open to being wrong here. But I'm a big Rashid Shaheed truther. I like Alec Pierce a lot too. I'm a really big Rashid Shaheed truther. I feel like
don't do this.
I know. I'm very open to being wrong. I could really be wrong, but I feel like whoever is going to get Rashid Shaheed at a discount relative to Alec Pierce is going to be the winner here. They're very similar players to me. It's just Alec Pierce has this sort of untapped potential, this ceiling that hasn't really materialized at the NFL level. I see it. Dude is a freak athlete. I get it, but we just haven't seen it. And so it just feels like to me as Rashid Shaheed is Alec Pierce, like they're kind of the same, except Pierce has a bit more of a ceiling that we haven't really seen come to fruition. But yeah, this is a white boy, but he is probably maybe the best deep threat in the NFL. I think Rashid Shaheed is like top 3. Again, I'm a huge truther. But so 2024 and 2025, Alec Pierce ranked top 3 in deep receiving yards. In 2024, if you took out all of his deep catches, so that's balls traveling 20 plus yards in the air, he averaged something like 10 yards per game. Like, it was pathetic. And then last year, it was like, again, top 3 in deep receiving yards, but minus that, I don't know, 20, 25, 30 non-deep receiving yards per game, which is good. It's an improvement. He's becoming more of a complete receiver. And so to me, it's, what are you getting with Alec Pierce? You're getting a top 3 deep threat with rare speed, which is valuable. We know NFL coordinators covet this more than fantasy players because of what this allows your offense to do and open up the field. Although if you look at Alec Pierce's EPA on-off splits, they weren't good at all. But still, historically, that's what you get with these deep speedsters. And so can he take that next step? Can he be more of a complete receiver? I will throw that to you, Brett.
Yeah, he is a complete receiver. You're looking at the way he was used versus the actual skill set, right? He was on a team with Josh Downs and Michael Pittman Jr. They move on from Michael Pittman Jr., which opens the door for Alec Pierce to be more of that every down, high target earning possession type receiver on top of the deep threat stuff. I also think he's a better deep threat than Shaheed. I think, if I were to rank my deep threats in the NFL, the list would start with Jameson Williams and Alec Pierce. So I think he's a pretty awesome player. Now, to your initial point, the team that signs Shaheed will get better value. Well, that might be true because Pierce signed for $30 million a year. I think Shaheed will get like 10. So that might be true, Scott. But as far as like who's a better player, I think Alec Pierce clearly is a better player. We also have breaking news, guys.
Oh,
and you guys are gonna laugh at this one, but Jalen Nailor signed a deal in Las Vegas, 3 years, $36 million.
Jalen Nailor, who'd you say?
Jalen Nailor, yep.
Former Ascot.
Yeah, he's an ass guy, and he's in Las Vegas, who has no proven wide receivers. They have Brock Bowers, obviously, but after that, I mean, there's a real opportunity here for Naylor to be fantasy relevant. I'll push that to you guys though, because I don't really know on wide receiver 3 type guys.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Naylor was a name that some people speculated could get a decent contract. This is maybe a little more than I thought he would have gotten. But like you said, Vegas needs wide receivers. We're very excited about the Clint Kubiak offense. I think Jalen Naylor is probably a player that you want to absolutely mix in best ball. And I think that if you were sort of thinking that Trey Tucker was going to take a big step forward with Kubiak, this probably pours a little cold water on that one. I still think that we're going to see Vegas, Brett. We have talked about them potentially selecting a wide receiver either with their second first-round pick or that early second-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this prevents them from doing that. So I think looking at the Raiders wide receiver room, it's probably not a complete set of receivers on the roster at this point. But this is definitely one that best ball drafters who've been mixing in Naylor in like round 20, you feel very, very rewarding on that one. And that's a great segue. Brett Whitefield and I every single week are recording the 2026 NFL Draft podcast. We're going to be talking about all sorts of fantasy relevant things there. If you're listening to Fantasy Football Daily or you're tuning in to see Scott and I, we also record School of Scott. Make sure you're also subscribed to the 2026 NFL Draft podcast. And the three of us will all be streaming live. That actually the next time we're streaming live together, guys, will be the NFL Draft. Fantasy Points is your home for the best fantasy football coverage of the NFL Draft anywhere. We're streaming all 3 days right here on Fantasy Points YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel for that. Should be a lot of fun. Let's get back to the Alec Pierce one, guys. Alec Pierce, Brett, you talked about it. Scott, you talked about it. I'll say I really like this for Alec Pierce. I think this solidifies sort of where his ADP is, and I think he'll trend up a little bit. I'll also add that I like this one for Tyler Warren because Michael Pittman's now off the roster. Tyler Warren is the tight end 4 overall. Had 113 targets last year, guys. I think it's a realistic projection to say Tyler Warren with a wide receiver like Alec Pierce, that we'd all say, Scott, if we said Alec Pierce got 115 targets next year, that's sort of a win for his archetype, leading the NFL in yards per reception in back-to-back seasons, a lot of downfield usage. You get him up to that 115, 120 target range, that's fantastic for Alec Pierce. But I think with Tyler Warren now, with Michael Pittman Jr. off the roster, and Michael Pittman Jr. had a lot of games where he was really highly targeted by Daniel Jones. Now you get Tyler Warren. There's a chance we could see Tyler Warren into a 130 target range at the tight end position. So Tyler Warren, I know there's a lot of mixed opinions in both Dynasty and in redraft, whether or not he's a guy who could take his game to another level. I'm sort of more bullish on him now than I was yesterday. Scott, your quick thoughts on Tyler Warren?
Yeah, I'm super bullish. I'm curious what this means for Tyler Warren and Josh Downs. You know, really excited us in 2024, looked great on a per play basis. And then the only question was, hey, can he be a full-time player when you have these 4 really good wide receivers and a strong tight end? And he was just barely on the field. So I'm curious to hear Brett's thoughts on Josh Downs. But if Josh Downs is in the same like 50% route share role, then yeah, you have to expect Alec Pierce to take that next step, be more of a complete receiver, and Tyler Warren to, you know, really flirt with being a top 3 fantasy tight end, a PPR cheat code tight end. You saw that Daniel Jones, you know, suffered that Achilles injury, but up until that point, Tyler Warren was the clear tight end 2 in fantasy, in total fantasy points, behind only Trey McBride. So yeah, I'm you know, a player I loved. Really good environment here, assuming they get Daniel Jones back and healthy. Probably still favor Loveland, but it's close.
And Brett, anything to add on Tyler Warren, the stylistic nature of the Indianapolis Colts offense this season?
I mean, he's awesome. The Steichen offense is always going to have, you know, the tight end as a catch and run type player, and Warren's just perfect for it. So, yeah, I mean, obviously with the targets going away in MPJ, it only accelerates the timeline for him to be a dominant fantasy producer. So I'm in.
Now, the New England Patriots were widely speculated to be one of the teams that was very much in the mix for Alec Pierce. In fact, there's some reports saying he was offered more money by multiple teams here. New England's the one that we have circled here, Scott. Stephon Diggs was released. They have a glaring hole at the wide receiver 1 spot. Every time I say that, there's always somebody in the chat who gets mad and says you're underestimating Kayshon Boutte. But let's talk about realistic wide receiver 1 candidates for New England here. Scott, do you think this puts a lot of pressure on them to pay the King's ransom to Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles and acquire A.J. Brown?
Yeah, well, let me just say, yeah, it's a King's ransom. Like, what are the reports that
a first and a second,
and they turn that down, and so you're never winning a trade with Howie Roseman. So yeah, it could be a lofty price. I would love that for Drake May, but I mean, he didn't really seem to need it last year. And one thing I'll say from a fantasy perspective, that's actually not a great landing spot for fantasy. Drake May, like, interesting stat here. Unfortunately, it took me until about like week 14 of chasing Stephon Diggs in DFS before I found this out. But Drake May prides himself on being a guy who spreads the ball around. He takes that really seriously. He really prides himself on that. Ever since high school, he would always look at the stats for his receivers at halftime, and he wanted to make sure everyone got fed. And so multiple New England beat writers have talked about this, reported on this, and you really saw that last year. So, A.J. Brown kind of wants to be the alpha somewhere, so maybe New England's not the best landing spot for him. From an NFL perspective, really, really exciting. From a fantasy perspective, there's probably better spots.
I will say never on the Los Angeles Chargers being the one that actually pays pays for A.J. Brown here, guys. The Chargers have been involved in every single free agent or potentially traded wide receiver that has been speculated out there. Brett, do you care to take a guess on A.J. Brown? Does he stay in Philly? Is he traded? Do you have a vibe here?
If I had to guess, I'll say he stays in Philly. For one, his contract is very prohibitive to being traded unless they just want to eat a ton of dead cap. That's the first thing. He's in year 1 of an extension. Like, he hasn't even played on the extension that they gave him. So he's in year 1 of an extension. So that the dead money's crazy. And you'll see teams eat the dead cap if they're not in a championship window. However, the Eagles are. I think the winning strategy should be to convince A.J. Brown this is the right place for him. Doesn't mean it will happen. That's just my guess.
One more question for Brett Whitefield specifically, and we covered this on the last couple of shows. Where does Jeremiah Love sign now? Question from Adam Wallace in the chat. Jeremiah Love, we know it's not going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. Where is he going to get drafted at should be the way we should phrase this. What is your probable landing spot? I mentioned Tennessee at 5. Is that sort of where the window starts? And Arizona signing Tyler Algier, we've talked about maybe 3 overall being in play. Probably maybe a little less likely now with the Connor restructure and the Algier signing. Where do you think he goes, Brett?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to start the conversation at number 2 with the Jets, even though they have Brees on the transition tag or whatever. That doesn't scare me away from that. And then I think you go from 2 to 4 to 5, and then maybe even 7 with Washington. I mean, there's plenty of landing spots still for Jeremiah Love.
Yeah,
man. If you were top 6, you have no business. I mean, top 10, you have no business drafting a running back. If you're the Jets, if you're the Titans, the Raiders.
The question was who will. I agree with you, Scott. I don't think you should ever draft a running back in the first round.
Just hoping. I know. I'm hoping we've learned that lesson. I'm hoping NFL Cognizant has no.
No, they're going the other direction.
Other direction is right. We've seen it in multiple drafts.
I mean, we've had Bijan, Gibbs, and Genty lately, and then Jeremiah Love's just as good as all those guys. So.
I will say teams that have not made a move that were speculated, Cam Scatterbo, Scott Barrett's guy, avoided the Kenneth Walker annihilation today, and they're picking 5th overall, so it's going to be another really sweaty moment potentially for Scott with his guy Scatterbo there. I'll say the Washington Commanders did not end up with Etienne or Walker, so they're sort of in prime position. And Brett, the 2 teams that I'll give a shout out to The Athletic. They do the article with which way executives think the top 10 teams are going to be drafting in the NFL draft. Everybody said 8 to New Orleans or 9 to Kansas City for Jeremiah Love. Those things are not going to happen now with the ETN and the Walker signing. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Guys, we've got to get to the Malik Willis signing as well. One of the biggest, if not the biggest, free agent domino to fall at the quarterback position is Malik Willis. Willis ends up in Miami, sort of following this pathway where all these Green Bay people are in prominent positions, including the head coach, including management in Miami. Malik Willis, widely speculated to be a Miami Dolphin, gets there, 3-year contract, $67 million, $45 million guaranteed here, Brett. That's not nothing. It's a pretty fun landing spot for Malik Willis. I think from a fantasy football perspective, no matter how you think the Dolphins are going to do next year or how this offense is going to be, Willis is a player that in a full-time role could end up with 700 plus rushing yards. Am I too bullish here on the rushing production from Malik Willis in this offense?
No, I think he's probably the second best running quarterback in the league right now, if not the best. So, yeah, that's like low end of what I would expect, actually.
And
Remember
Scott,
all the shit you got for putting a first round grade on him, Brett?
I do. Which brings me to my point. Guess, what is that? What do I always say, Scott? I'm not ever wrong. Sometimes
you're never wrong. You're just early, Brett. You're never wrong. You're just early.
So I want to say, I love this and hate this from a fantasy perspective. I hate this for Devon Achane, who's going to be getting fewer targets. I hate this for Jalen Waddle, who's going to be getting fewer targets. I presume. I love this for Malik Willis, that he's been awesome. You look at over the last 2 years, courtesy of Fantasy Points data, Malik Willis easily leads the league in fantasy points per dropback. He's at 0.90. No one besides him, 0.75. And then you just like look at his numbers the last 2 years with the Packers. You break it down on a per start basis. It's 23.6 fantasy points per start. You break it down on a per 4 quarters basis. It's 23.2 fantasy points per 4 quarters. I know we got a small sample size here, 6 games, three starts.
Hey, Scott, we have massive breaking news.
Oh boy. Oh, baby.
Mike Evans is signing a 3-year deal with the San Francisco 49ers.
Yo, I was thinking they were going to make a splash at wide receiver. I love that. That's super exciting.
Scott Barrett, we recorded on School of Scott, and you talked about your favorite ADP value at the time. You ran extremely pure with this one. We talked about ADP values of older wide receivers, 30 plus, and a slam dunk landing spot for Mike Evans, guys. I mean, Juwan Jennings, news for everyone out there, Juwan Jennings will not be a San Francisco 49er after this deal. You're going to have Mike Evans with Ricky Pearsall. Pearsall hasn't been able to stay on the field. And shout out to all the doctors watching our show live. They always hate this one. But I think George Kittle misses 8 to 10 games. And does he come back at full strength?
Yeah.
Mike Evans, with one of the more efficient quarterbacks in terms of Brock Purdy, this is a great landing spot for Mike Evans. Really, really exciting one from a fantasy.
I hope he got paid too. And I love that this is a 3-year deal for him. You know, maybe that's not the smartest. Yeah. Dumb move for the 49ers, 3 years for a guy that old. I totally get it. But like, he is not washed. Like, he is not even remotely washed. He's ranked top 3 in ass 3 years in a row. And we saw Devontae Adams too, another older guy, top 3 in ass last year. And so like, yeah, let's get Purdy a real weapon here. This is a team with Super Bowl aspirations. From an NFL perspective, I love this. And I really think the PPR potential, touchdown potential is going to be there for him in San Francisco.
I'm over the moon with this one. And I didn't really speculate Mike Evans to San Francisco. It makes a ton of sense for both parties. Scott, I love that you said Devontae Adams. I was going to say the exact same thing. Same division. You see Devontae Adams come on with Los Angeles Rams, and he has 14 touchdown catches and missed time last year. So, like, these guys that are the true alphas, these guys are aging gracefully. And I think Mike Evans, this is fantastic. It's also, from a fallout, Emeka Egbuka, year 2. Baker Mayfield goes from having the veterans deference to a guy like Mike Evans to maybe fully embracing this year 2 wide receiver in Emeka Egbuka. So I think this makes Mike Evans' ADP go up significantly. I mean, Scott, I'll give you a real life question here, Scott. So we talked about Mike Evans. Let me pull up the current underdog ADP. Where do you think Mike Evans should be going. He's wide receiver 34 now.
That's
Wide receiver 24?
It's
Wide
so
receiver
stupid.
24? Wide receiver 20? How high should he
Higher. Where was Devontae Adams last year? Who is a big target for us as well. I gotta point out this great comment in chat. Time to figure out who the Evans handcuff is on the 49ers. Yeah, you have that what is it? Like the radioactive 7G EMF substation right next to the stadium, and just like their ridiculously bad injury luck they have every year. They're the most injured team, and given Mike Evans' history with hamstrings, it's like every year he misses a couple games with a hamstring injury. That is the thing. Like, that's what you have to worry about with Mike Evans. It's not when he's on the field, he's going to separate, he's going to moss guys. But maybe you have to worry about that hamstring a little bit.
I want to quickly, we have a ton of live viewers watching right now. If you're watching our YouTube channel, do us a favor and subscribe to it. We're dropping fantasy shows like this multiple times a week. They're going to help you crush your leagues. But we have some people asking, Scott and Brett, you've got to add context this time of year to the new listeners and viewers when you say a guy's top 3 in ass. Because they don't know you're talking about average separation score. We want to be very clear, guys. When they say ass, they're talking about average separation score, which is a metric that you can get access to if you subscribe to Fantasy Points Data, the best source of data anywhere in fantasy football. Right now, you can use the code FANTASY and get 10% off of any package, including Fantasy Points Data. But give us a 30-second version of what average separation score is, please, Brett Whitefield.
Yeah, average separation score is it's a metric that we chart. It's hand charted by our elite team of analysts, and basically what it measures is how well a player separates. But it's adjusted for circumstantial things like, if a player, for example, gets off coverage and he runs a 5-yard hitch, he's not necessarily scoring well. Stephen O'Rourke in the chat as our resident ass man, he kind of runs the ass team actually. So shout out Stephen O'Rourke.
Yeah, shout out Stephen. And just if you're not a Fantasy Point subscriber, Stephen O'Rourke is one of the people not on this stream right now. We have such a deep roster of extremely sharp people that are going to help you find metrics like average separation score and help you crush your league. Another big shameless plug here, Scott Barrett and I are going to be doing the next Dynasty Life, and that's my Dynasty show, and you can only see Dynasty Life on YouTube if you subscribe to Fantasy Points Dynasty YouTube. So we have a new YouTube channel called Fantasy Points Dynasty YouTube. Do us a favor and subscribe to that one. You're also going to get not only my content there, but you're going to get Ryan Heath, Thomas Tipple, Jacob Sanderson. We're doing a ton on that channel. It's the new home of both Dynasty Life and Dynasty Points. And we're going to have Scott over there. We're going to have Brett over there. All of the people you like to listen to from Fantasy Points from a Dynasty lens. This is peak Dynasty season, and we're over there. Let's quickly talk about Malik Willis and get back to it. Scott and Brett, from a game theory perspective here, we're all sort of bullish on him running for a lot of yards. Perhaps he could be on Scott Barrett's Exodia watch list from now on as an ADP value. From a Dynasty lens, for the Dynasty listeners, is he a player you should sell based on this contract, based on the unbelievable amount of optimism out there in the community right now? Or on the flip side, is he a player you want to embrace and buy? Scott, your thoughts on this one?
No, he's a buy, and he very well could be my Exodia this year. When I tweeted those stats out I mentioned earlier, that was the top comment. It was, gee, I wonder who your Exodia is going to be. And like, it's always a runner. And why is it always a runner? It's because you guys always sleep on the runners. They're always way too cheap because you have this Konami cheat code in Malik Willis, who might be above Justin Fields, might be above Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels in volume. At least that's what we saw with the Green Bay Packers. Is you have this guaranteed floor where if he's starting games, you're guaranteed, like, even if he sucks, you're guaranteed like 18 fantasy points per game. And then that's about where he's priced, or these runners are typically priced. And so the potential, if this guy is actually good, is always free. And so you see that with my track record on Exodia quarterbacks is flawless. I've gotten very lucky, but yeah, I mean, Jackson Dart is one of these guys this year. Malik Willis is one of these guys. And so it's really, what does ADP look like? But I'm super bullish. Like, it doesn't matter what this supporting cast is if you run enough. It doesn't matter if you're not that accurate if you run enough. It doesn't matter how good your defense is if you run enough. So, and this is a guy who is historically, I think by rushing attempts per start is the most in NFL history. It's only 3 starts, of course, but you saw this with his college profile as well. So yeah, I'm bullish. I'm a buyer. I'm not a seller. I don't know how long this lasts. I don't know how many seasons he's starting in the NFL, but this is a player Brett really likes. So yeah, I want to be a buyer on him, not a seller.
Yeah, and Brett, there's a somewhat of a similar scenario as we saw with Jordan Love, where Willis backed up Jordan Love. Jordan Love had his opportunity and absolutely killed it his first year in the league. Malik Willis is behind Jordan Love, flames out of Tennessee, ends up in Green Bay, plays behind Jordan Love, and then gets this opportunity. I sort of agree with Scott here. How about you?
No, I totally agree. I mean, the thing about Malik coming out, the raw talent was really never the question, even down to like accuracy. He was a pretty accurate thrower considering the profile. It was always the processing power, the ability to get through reads, not take negative plays, and obviously playing for a guy like Matt LaFleur, like, you're going to clean that up. Look at Jordan Love's career so far. I mean, when he was in college, he was a mess from the things I just mentioned, and then slowly over time, he now turns the ball over, some of the fewest rates in the league. He doesn't take sacks. Like, these are all really good positive things. I think Malik Willis is on a similar track. He's an extremely talented guy. So I'm curious to see if they have enough firepower to really maximize the skill set. It is going to have to be like this, RPO heavy offense, and RPOs have kind of a thing of the past in the NFL. We've gone to a much more under center passing style. We're back to that. So what they're going to have to do is be really creative, but I love it. I love it for them. I love the continuity too. No one's talking about that yet. The whole Miami regime is, from Green Bay. There's a familiarity there with Malik Willis. And I think that should, give people comfort that this is the right play for them, because they've been around the guy. They've seen him every day in practice for the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think this is a really, really exciting one. We're going to talk about Malik Willis all offseason. I also give a shout out to Tom Brawley and the people behind our betting team. They were recommending Malik Willis at plus 25,000 odds. It just went down for NFL MVP. Malik Willis just went down to plus 10,000. So you had a huge, huge advantage if you're following our betting advice. You could get access to that. Scott, let everybody know what we have coming out on the betting side.
Yeah, we're going to launch a new in-season betting package for Fantasy Point subscribers. But if you are a pro subscriber or an all access subscriber, you get our off-season bets. For the NFL draft, that's usually a print fest for us. And these sort of future bets, you get that included with a pro or all access subscription.
Scott, when you were talking about your Exodia quarterback, that's something that Scott's going to drop towards the end of the summer. You'll be able to hear about some of the Exodia candidates when Scott and I podcast together on School of Scott throughout the summer.
A Exodia quarterback last year was Drake May, who finished 1 vote short of MVP. You pour one out for some of our subs who went heavy on the bets for Drake May. One sub stood to win over 30K and a few other subs like that as well. And again, just one vote short.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jackson Dart as a potential Exodia candidate. Nice professional segue for the next player we're going to talk about, Isaiah Likely, who many of us have been Isaiah Likely truthers for years. Played behind Mark Andrews, and whenever he had an opportunity in Baltimore, would put up big fantasy numbers. Last year, we heard Isaiah Likely was going to get this contract extension for Baltimore. John Harbaugh says his goal for Isaiah Likely last May, John Harbaugh came out and said, my goal for Isaiah Likely this season is for him to be an all-pro tight end. Didn't happen last year. Got injured. And then Baltimore gave this strange contract extension to Mark Andrews, an older tight end coming off an injury. Sort of put Isaiah Likely out in limbo. But the fantasy community sort of held hope that he could end up on a fun landing spot. I think we got one, Scott, with your New York Giants. And my thesis for Isaiah Likely here is really easy. reunites with a head coach that loves him, was talking him up immensely, ends up in an offense that just lost Wan'Dale Robinson, who had back-to-back seasons of 140 plus targets. I mean, that's crazy. 280 plus targets over the last 2 seasons for Wan'Dale. He's gone. The current wide receiver 2 is Darius Slayton, who's got a very much cap target ceiling and a talent ceiling at this point in his career. You've got Malik Neighbors, who's going to start the season out on the PUP list, might never be right this year. And you've got Isaiah Likely in a situation, guys, where I think Isaiah Likely can thrive with Theo Johnson in 12 personnel, but I think Isaiah Likely is also going to be moved all over the field and be used as a weapon in this pass game. Brett, you've talked about his effectiveness as a screen merchant. Those targets are open for him right now in this offense. I think Isaiah Likely should be treated as a borderline tight end 1 after signing this deal. Scott, are you down with that sort of valuation?
I'm excited about this. I'm getting Martellus Bennett vibes. For those who don't remember, he was stuck behind Greg Olsen for a number of years, but the fantasy street's always very excited for his potential should he become the guy. He signs with the Giants, and he was great for fantasy for a couple of years there, top 3 fantasy tight end. Isaiah Likely, we know Harbaugh loves him. Last year, there was a quote, his expectation for Likely is to be an all-pro. But yeah, you get out from under Mark Andrews. You have this guy who, Mark Andrews didn't miss any games the last 2 years, but over his last 5 games without Andrews, Likely averaged 15 fantasy points per game. That doesn't include 2 100-yard games. One was week 1 of 2024. If you don't remember, Andrews had that motor vehicle accident, came into the season hurt. The other was a week 18 game. But yeah, it's just, when we've seen him on the NFL field, allowed to be the guy, great production, even with Andrews there, he's always, top 5 in fantasy points per route run. And in college, the athleticism was a concern, but heading into that combine, multiple teams had a round 2 grade on him. His analytics profile, just in terms of the production in college, was incredible. So I'm bullish. I don't think Brett is, but I'm pretty excited here.
Brett, break down your concerns on Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, just not really a well-rounded skill set as a tight end. He's strictly a dump and run, scheme it up for him kind of guy. I just don't know how much room that gives you to run in the fantasy space where you need to be, I hate this term, but I'm going to say it, you need to be a target, quote unquote, earner. He's just not that guy. He's not a good route runner. He's not a good separator. He's a catch and run guy. And, I think those catch and run opportunities were very well pronounced with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. While Jackson Dart is mobile, he doesn't have the same scramble drill efficacy as Lamar Jackson. I don't really like this, to be quite honest with you.
Let us know in the chat. Do you like the Isaiah Likely landing spot? I think Scott and I are pretty bullish on this one. It feels like one where I think he's going to be a big ADP winner for people drafting him early in best ball. He's currently tight end 20 on Underdog. I think that number is going to rise pretty significantly. Let us know, though. Maybe you're on the Brett side. Maybe you're on the Scott side here.
He's been he ranked 100th in 2025 and 101 in 2024 in average separation score. His teammate Mark Andrews smoked him in both years, top 3 among tight ends. So, yeah.
Well, the Theo Johnson arguments for this year, him taking a big breakthrough season here in year 3. This sort of caps his targets. This past year, Theo Johnson actually got up to 74 targets. I don't think we're going to see that number rise after this one. Again, new regime coming into New York. They sort of told you their enthusiasm about using Theo Johnson as a passing game weapon with this signing. Quick shout out to Trey Camberling putting up these amazing visuals for us throughout the show. Trey, you're doing a fantastic job for us here. You put one up saying the Patriots were never in on Mike Evans per sources. So we don't know what New England's going to do here. If it's not A.J. Brown, could it be a player that maybe nobody's projecting to be traded? Brett, we've talked about maybe New England drafting a wide receiver at the tail end of the first round where there's some players like maybe a Boston or an Omar Cooper that could end up being sort of in that range. A KC Concepcion we're huge fans of, but we will keep an eye on what New England's going to do at wide receiver all throughout this week on our podcasts and well up into our coverage of the NFL draft. Guys, let's keep this conversation going. Let's talk about a signing, a couple of signings that are a little bit under the radar. Kenneth Gainwell signs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where Gainwell had a terrific season this past year in Pittsburgh, ended up finishing as an RB1 this year, and was top 5 among all running backs with 73 receptions on the year. Scott, we've been very bullish about Bucky Irving in a Zach Robinson offense. Does the presence of Kenneth Gainwell, with his ability as a pass catcher, cap the upside of Bucky Irving? Or is this more of a, hey, they got a really good backup, and stylistically they can do the exact same things with both backs? Which way do you lean here?
Yeah, I think I don't know Brett's take, but I think Brett is probably going to be pessimistic given Bucky's size, and he's just always going to have to be a committee back, like a 60% snap share guy because of Bucky Irving's size. But we have seen things change. Bucky in his rookie season, James Cook the past few years, Devon Achane the past few years. I'm bullish on him being the guy. I love Zach Robinson's comments comping him to Bijan Robinson. And what you have in Kenneth Gainwell is he's very similar to Rachaad White. He's, a better pass catcher, I think, than a runner. But he's also a smaller back. And so I could see this just being like a depth piece where he's very similar to Bucky, but just not as good. And so you could run the whole offense should something happen to Bucky, but I don't think he's a better pass catcher than Bucky. I don't think he's a better runner than Bucky. So to me, I'm bullish. I think this is, if they don't add a name brand running back who strikes fear into my heart, I think this is incredible.
Brett, anything to add here with your take on Gainwell? Is this really just a good Rachaad White replacement?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the archetype. Gainwell is a much better pass down player than Bucky Irving. It's not even remotely close. Gainwell is an actual pass down weapon, and he's one of the best running backs in pass protection in the league. Like that's a huge win from that standpoint. So for Gainwell, I mean, like this is a really good spot for him where we've seen this team constantly use Rachaad White as a featured player in the pass game, and Gainwell's better than him at that job. So,
and I'll trust Brett on that if that's what Brett says for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, that's a real concern
Bucky's
too.
Early down grinder that's what he does.
He was really efficient in the passing game as a rookie, and there is, I think, some benefit to having every down back where, it kind of helps you out, even if you're the slightly lesser pass catcher, just staying on the field. But yeah, I mean, okay, you're probably right. And so, hey, I mean, Rachaad White, really good pass catcher. So I'm hoping for a role that looks like something in between second half of rookie season and what we had last year.
For me, it's interesting because you talked about Kenneth Walker's ADP rising up to a range where it became sort of difficult to click. Bucky's gotten to a range where you're taking him, and I was comfortable taking him, Scott, but it sort of feels like a ceiling click. He's all the way up at running back 13. So Kenneth Gainwell getting there, yeah, I don't love it. Bucky Irving had 47 receptions in 2024 during his big rookie year breakout. And we've sort of been circling the when Rachaad White's gone, it's going to clear up more targets for him thesis for multiple years. So I don't love the Gainwell signing here. Let us know in the comments what you think about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers backfield and the signing of Kenneth Gainwell. What does it do to Bucky Irving? I think Irving, at the very least, is going to be falling behind Kenneth Walker. They're close enough in ADP right now. We'll keep an eye on some other running back signings. Guys, we've still got Rico Dowdle out there. We've still got Rachaad White. We've still got J.K. Dobbins. We've got a ton of backs available in the free agent marketplace that are going to sign. But I will add, Denver didn't sign anybody today, which is interesting because the R.J. Harvey getting annihilated early on in free agency, people were out there. Hasn't happened yet. And Cam Skattebo remains unscathed. So last offseason at this time, we were really worried about Chase Brown. Nothing ended up happening. We'll keep an eye on those backfields. And Washington Commanders have not made a signing yet at the running back position. We're going to continue to cover all of those backfields throughout the next few days right here at Fantasy Points. Let's pivot over to a wide receiver signing. For everybody who loved our discussion of Jalen Nailor signing with the Vegas Raiders, we're going to talk about another sort of non-fantasy relevant wide receiver in Olamide Zaccheaus. who the fantasy community sort of hated last year because he was taking away targets from Luther Burden. Now Olamide Zaccheaus signs with the Atlanta Falcons, clearing up another hurdle for Burden to go nuclear this year. You had DJ Moore traded to Buffalo last week. Now Luther Burden, unquestioned wide receiver 1 or 2 in Chicago opposite Rome Odunze with Colston Loveland at the tight end position. Scott, is Luther Burden the wide receiver breakout this year heading into year 2? The marketplace is making you pay a lot for him. Burden is wide receiver 21 on Underdog.
Yeah, I'm out. That's a bit too rich for my blood, and you know me. Like
I'm shocked. I'll say I'm shocked by that. I'm shocked.
I know. Luther Burden was an exodia for me last year. I'm drooling over his potential as the slot wide receiver in this Ben Johnson offense. We saw what he did for Amon-Ra St. Brown. We saw what he did for Jarvis Landry all throughout his career. Slot wide receivers at Eden. Luther Burden just had the second best rookie season yards per route run since 2010, behind only OBJ. That's one of the most predictive stats there is. You look at the top 10 of that list, it's all superstars. But this ADP has gotten out of control for a guy who couldn't get on the field as a full-time player, and then was outshined by Colston Loveland, who looked like, prime Mike Evans out there. And that yards per route run is very misleading. I hate to say it. But if you take away that one trick play, or if you include the postseason, it wasn't a remarkable yards per route run by any stretch of the imagination. I'm also bullish on Rome Odunze, who has dealt with serious injuries both years of his career. He was great weeks 1 through 4, fell off a cliff. He was dealing with a serious injury, and also in his rookie season, he picked up like a grade 2 hamstring strain, whatever it was, in like week 2 of that. So I think there's more for Rome Odunze. And then this is a player Brett and I weren't too bullish on coming out as a player. We love the landing spot, but as the player, and I'll let Brett Whitefield pile on, much to your dismay, Theo.
I can't believe it, Scott. Scott, I'm actually shocked by this one because last offseason you were so high on Luther Burden.
Who were the wide receivers being drafted right next to him, Theo?
Okay, that's a very, very good point. When we're chasing upside in that range of ADP, it's a price tag thing for you, not necessarily a talent thing for you. Correct?
It's a bit of both.
All right. Well, Brett Whitefield, you are you were taking actually a sort of an optimistic approach with Burden with something you put out there on X. Was that sarcasm, or are you in on Luther Burden, a guy who you were a little bit lower on last year than the community?
That was 100% sarcasm. Olamide Zaccheaus signs in Atlanta, and I tweet, "Oh wow, Luther Burden might actually start next year." The point being, he couldn't even get on the field over Olamide Zaccheaus. Olamide Zaccheaus ran more routes than Luther Burden last year. Notoriously, he was basically the wide receiver 3/4 the entire season. So, and that was with a banged up Rome Odunze even. Here's the thing. Luther Burden has an elite ability to run after catch. That's his thing. That's a superpower. We need those short area quickness moves to translate into route running at some point. It didn't last year. It was still pretty rough. Now, Ben Johnson's a master at scheming guys into space, but I honestly think that the offense is going to run through Colston Loveland and Rome Odunze. You also have quarterback issues in Chicago, and no one seems willing to talk about that. Caleb Williams' catchable ball rate was...
Come on, Brett.
What?
Didn't you see those sick throws he had in the playoffs?
I mean, listen, Caleb Williams, to be determined here.
If you don't think Caleb Williams' play on the field last year hurt his pass catchers in fantasy, then something's off. We got to get to the table.
Brett's not wrong. This is... You can't say this publicly, but he's 100% right.
Well, let us know in the comments your thoughts on Caleb Williams. I will say that I will take a bullish approach with Luther Burden. I think that he's been running incredibly pure with the moves that Chicago is making. We heard Ben Johnson talking up Luther Burden last offseason. I think we see Luther Burden break out in a major way. I look forward to debating Scott and Brett on this all offseason long. Make sure you are subscribed to all of our podcasts. We got 5,500 live viewers on YouTube right now. Huge shout out, and a big shout out to the viewers and the commenters that we recognize every single week here. Fantasy Football Daily, that's what you're watching now. I'm dropping multiple shows a week. You can find that anywhere you get your podcasts and right here on Fantasy Points YouTube. The First Read podcast, make sure you subscribe to that. That's Brett Whitefield's podcast. Absolute fire. In season, Brett, you're doing so much cool stuff, and off season. Scott and I record School of Scott. That's dropping multiple times a month, and then every single week in season. We're going to help you crush your fantasy leagues on School of Scott. We've done it for multiple years. We have multiple big hits on that show, and we'll keep running pure. And then the 2026 NFL Draft podcast, that's Brett Whitefield and myself every single week. And a quick reminder to everybody watching this on YouTube, come back here for our live coverage of the NFL Draft. We're going to give you the best fantasy football coverage anywhere of the NFL Draft. You know, the big networks, they're not doing a service. They're not helping you win in fantasy during the NFL Draft. We're going to help you there. That is so much fun. Brett and I for multiple days, as much Scott Barrett as we can get out of him through those 2-day periods. And it's John Hansen shows up for those ones. Absolute fire when John comes on with us. Ryan Heath, Thomas Tipple, Tom Brawley, Joe Dolan, Graham Barfield, everyone will appear on those. The whole Fantasy Points team will be on that stream. Make sure you tune in for that one. And then our Dynasty channel, Fantasy Points Dynasty. If you like watching my redraft content, you're going to love the Dynasty content we're dropping over there. The home of Dynasty Life and the home of Dynasty Points, Fantasy Points Dynasty. Scott Barrett and I are doing a Dynasty Reddit AMA, and we're going to be taking questions over on Dynasty Life. We're going to stream that one on Fantasy Points Dynasty. So if you're a Reddit subscriber, make sure you check that one out. We're everywhere here at Fantasy Points. One more signing we want to get to before we sort of wrap these things up, unless we get breaking news from Brett Whitefield, and then we'll keep this thing going. So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat right now. An interesting signing, Brett, and a huge one on the offensive line side of the ball. Tyler Linderbaum, probably the best free agent center on the market, signs with the Las Vegas Raiders. The Clint Kubiak offense, looking good here, Brett. Brock Bowers, we know what he is. Ashton Jeanty, we know what he is. A probable selection of Fernando Mendoza with the first overall pick. And now they solidify the interior offensive line with this center signing in Linderbaum. Talk about how you view Linderbaum. Are we talking about a potential all-pro center here in Vegas?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's already made several All-Pros. Yeah, Linderbaum is awesome. He was obviously probably the best player available, not just center. He resets the center market by like $8 million per year, which is ridiculous. This is huge for Ashton Jeanty, though. And you start to look at the Raiders' offensive line, it's starting to look pretty good. You have, in 2024, this unit actually played significantly above expectation. And for whatever reason, in the Pete Carroll-led Raiders system last year, they completely went the wrong direction. Towards the end of the year, you saw development from guys like Jackson Powers-Johnson. DJ Glaze took a step forward. Colton Miller is one of the better left tackles in the league. Now you're adding arguably the second best center in football. I think Creed Humphrey is probably the only other guy that can say he's better than Linderbaum. Really the only question now is left guard, and they have guys in the fold. They have an Antonio Mafi that could fill that role, a Charles Grant, who they drafted to play left tackle last year, could kick into left guard. This is now starting to look like a really strong offensive line situation. Ashton Jeanty went from having nowhere to run last year to he should have some significant lanes this year. So if you were bullish on Jeanty this year, or last year, this year is going to be the year for him to really break out.
Yeah, Scott, your thoughts on this one? And again, not asking you to break down Linderbaum, but this was sort of the big argument against drafting Raiders was, look at how bad this offensive line is. Them making this sort of move, it's very, very exciting because it shows the willingness, much like we saw last year with Ben Johnson shows up in Chicago. Chicago makes all those offensive line moves. It just shows that they have a plan, and they're going to go get guys to help him pull off his scheme.
Yeah, and I kind of think they have to make some overpays here. It's just like, who's excited about going to the Raiders? Who wants to go to and they have all this salary cap space. But yeah, this is what we want for Ashton Jeanty. He had by far the worst offensive line in football last year, and only 2 games, I think, the offense was average or better in adjusted yards before contact per attempt. And those were the 2 games where Ashton Jeanty went nuclear. He had 30 plus fantasy points. He was hit first contact was initiated behind the line of scrimmage at far and away the highest rate in the league. So we didn't really get a chance to see how good Ashton Jeanty really is. And yes, shoring up that offensive line, I think is going to, at the very least, this signing is a very positive step in the right direction.
One more report we're getting here is that from Jeremy Fowler saying that the Ravens are not tendering Keaton Mitchell. Keaton Mitchell will be a free agent. Watch for the New York Giants. So potentially Isaiah Likely is joined by another former Raider in Keaton Mitchell. Scott Scadaboo might survive this thing. He might survive this thing, Scott. You had them restructure Devin Singletary. Now potentially Keaton Mitchell comes over. He avoids Kenneth Walker. We're going to keep an eye on Cam Scadaboo all throughout the offseason. But let's talk about.
Well, you keep bringing him up. Some breaking news for subscribers that might come as a shock. I am not bullish on Malik Neighbors and Cam Scadaboo this year. Two of my guys last year, two of my favorite players in the entire league. But I was talking with injury expert Jeff Mueller about this. He said neither guy is going to be 100% at any point this year. Malik Neighbors not even close to it. And so with that, you have not just an efficiency decline, less production, but you have a higher risk of compensatory injuries. We'll see how, what the cost looks like. But I typically avoid players when I hear something like that they're not going to be 100% at any point this year. So I actually support the Giants adding some depth to the running back position in free agency.
One more signing we just got shared with here. Zion Johnson, former Chargers guard, has signed a 3-year deal with the Cleveland Browns. I think this just becomes interesting, Brett, because Cleveland had some of the oldest interior offensive linemen in football this past year. Guys heading into free agency, they sort of addressed this. Maybe this sort of opens up Cleveland in the NFL draft to not go with a Maui Goa or necessarily an offensive lineman. Maybe frees them up to take in Carnell Tate. We'll just keep an eye on this one. But I want to get your guys' opinion before we wrap this show up on two relevant fantasy football trades that went down. We haven't had a chance to discuss these. David Montgomery to the Houston Texans. Scott, your thoughts on this one? Are you interested in Montgomery? We saw it 2 seasons ago with Joe Mixon, where he had a really big season coming away from Cincinnati, traded for a late round pick. Houston gives up more than that for David Montgomery. Your thoughts here on this trade and Montgomery's outlook in 2026?
Yeah, I don't know how excited I am about the Texans offense, but I love this. Just because I love David Montgomery. We've always loved David Montgomery. I think he's a bell cow running back. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs. He's maybe the best running back in football, but he's really freaking good. Really underrated in the passing game. I'll let Brett speak to that. I know he has some hot takes there, but just really consistent. A guy who can withstand a robust workload. And yeah, so this is going to be a player. Maybe he doesn't have top 5 fantasy potential, but I see easy high-end RB2 upside for a player I love. What do you think, Brett?
Yeah, I mean, the situation upgrade is fantastic, where he should be a bell cow type running back. Scott and I, we've talked privately a bunch about how I feel about Montgomery's pass game skills compared to like a Jahmyr Gibbs. And, obviously Jahmyr Gibbs is extremely explosive and he's a more dynamic player, but Montgomery's a better pass down player than Jahmyr Gibbs. He's better in pass protection. He has a much better feel for timing and pace when it comes to check and release, getting out into his check down route. And so, yeah, I think he can absolutely be a 3-down back in Houston, and they might, rely on him to be such with what they're paying him, what they gave up to get him as well. The downgrade is the offensive line, obviously. Even with the issues Detroit had on the offensive line last year, they were still a top 12 offensive line in the league, where, Houston has been a really bad situation for several years. Now, they might have shaken some of that out by now, right, where maybe they feel like they finally have a good 5 starting core. They did just trade Titus Howard, though. I'm just skeptical of the situation. We saw David Montgomery behind a bad Bears O-line for years, and it just wasn't super pretty. Maybe Houston's a little bit further along than the Bears were in that era of Montgomery's career. However, it's something to be a little bit concerned about. However, the workload should be fantastic, though.
Yeah, running back 26 on Underdog, I'm fine paying that price for him. I think if he steams up a little bit higher, I talked about this with Jacob Sanderson. You can find out Ryan Heath and Jacob Sanderson and I's takes on David Montgomery if you check out one of our most recent episodes over on the Fantasy Points Dynasty YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, just go click that button. We dropped a favorite old guy buys. This is one of Jacob Sanderson's favorite old guy buys in Dynasty right now, and he shares sort of a bullish take. One player who the market didn't anticipate a second-round pick being traded for was DJ Moore, reuniting with Joe Brady in Buffalo, Brett. There's been a lot of people being very dismissive about this. I think the fantasy community said, look at how dumb Buffalo is trading a second-round pick for DJ Moore. They seem pretty excited to get DJ Moore. Traded wide receivers have been a huge edge in fantasy over the last few years. Does it continue with DJ Moore, with Josh Allen and Joe Brady over in Buffalo?
I mean, I really like the player team fit for sure. We can argue about whether they gave up too much to acquire him, but that's not for what we're doing right now. So, I love the team player fit. I think his skill set is much needed. He checks the intermediate and deep boxes that they've just frankly been missing since prime Stephon Diggs. His depreciation plus they eventually traded him. DJ Moore, he can fulfill the same role and kind of be that wide receiver one for Josh. He's also fantastic after the catch. I know that's depreciated a little bit the last couple of years, mostly because of injuries, but he's this is a great spot for him. They don't really have a lot of talent in their pass catcher room at all. So I think he could step into 140 targets pretty easily here.
That's a bold statement by Brett Whitefield, and that should make you very bullish on this situation. Scott, do you share Brett's thoughts on DJ Moore? Are you a little pessimistic on this one?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I tuned out for that entire thing. I didn't hear a word that Brett said. I was pulling up. It was reported what Brandon Beane turned down for. He was going after Jalen Waddle, and I think Miami wanted he offered a 2025. He offered a 2026 round one pick. Miami wanted the 2025 round one pick. I would much rather give up this year's round one for Jalen Waddle. This is not a good draft class. Jalen Waddle, a much better player. I do not think DJ Moore is a true wide receiver one in the NFL. I don't think he's worth his salary even, but Buffalo is absolutely desperate. And Brandon Beane is not a good GM. If you replaced Brandon Beane with the taco of your fantasy football league right after they took Josh Allen, Bills might have 2 Super Bowls right now. But thank God we finally got like a competent pass catcher for Josh Allen, but on paper, not a good value.
Why don't you think he can be a wide receiver one? What skill is he lacking?
Just look at what he did last year. He was about 6th on the team in targets per route run, behind Zacchaeus, behind Loveland, behind Burden, behind a banged up Romo Dunze. I don't think he's had one good year his entire career from a fantasy perspective, and then every year besides that, he's been massively overrated by both the fantasy and NFL community.
He's dealt with some of the worst quarterback play in NFL history. I mean, I'm not kidding. It's a fact.
I mean, you are Caleb Williams' biggest hater, but yeah.
Even if I give you Caleb Williams, let's even just say he had good quarterback play last year.
Yeah, but he's also had minimal target competition prior to this year. And then, like I said, he was 8th on the team in targets per route run. Hasn't been good the last 2 years.
Yeah, the 8th on the team in targets per route run, I wouldn't say is a DJ Moore issue. He also played through a gnarly groin injury.
I didn't know that.
This year. You didn't know that?
No, I missed it.
Well, listen, guys. This is the sort of debates you're going to get right here on Fantasy Points YouTube and Fantasy Football Daily. Big thank you to Scott Barrett and Brett Whitefield joining me today. This was absolute fire. And a big shout out to our live audience. Nearly 6,000 people watching us have arguments on DJ Moore this late into the process. Fantasy Points is your home to crush all of the NFL offseason. Make sure you're checking out Brett Whitefield's prospect guide. That's going to drop over at fantasypoints.com. If you want the best and most comprehensive guide to all of the 2026 rookies, make sure you check out Brett's prospect guide. You're going to get that over at fantasypoints.com. Also, make sure you're checking out our future episodes of the 2026 NFL Draft Podcast. If you're saying, what does Carnell Tate play like? Who is he like in the NFL? Brett and I have you covered, because our next episode that's dropping on that channel right here on Fantasy Points YouTube is player comparisons. We tell you where Jeremiah Love is going to look like in terms of NFL player comps, Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, and more. Scott Barrett and I will be on the next Dynasty Life answering all of your Dynasty questions in an AMA. If you're a Reddit subscriber, make sure you're checking out our AMA this Friday upcoming over on Reddit Dynasty Fantasy Football. Scott, anything coming out for you over at the channel that you want to promote before we wrap this thing up?
I got to catch up on these rookies so Brett and I could start doing film versus analytics.
Yeah, we're going to be breaking it down. Does Scott Barrett hate the rookie class? Make sure you tune in to Fantasy Points and find out. This was absolute fire. A big thank you to our audience. Stick with us here at Fantasy Points. We're going to help you crush your leagues next season.
That's him. That's the OG.